Suella Braverman has been challenged on GB News by an ill-informed and slightly ideologically limited student who hasn't done her homework. It's like a paper tiger, and I don't understand why this was done. On the one hand, Suella Braverman was made to look as if she was being attacked, but on the other hand, it was by somebody who was so lame that the attack looked absurd. Earlier, she went to Cambridge and she was booed in the street, which was the right approach, I'm sure. But the pro-Palestinian student who had a discussion with her accused her of being a war criminal, which really isn't the case. And she was, this was part of a program hosted by Patrick Christus. And she was challenged by the National Campaigns Coordinator for the Revolutionary Communist Party, Fiona Lali. She said that camps across the country are not being set up in response to October the 7th, the day Hamas terrorists invaded Israel, and it is disingenuous to suggest otherwise. From that point of view, I think she's probably broadly right. There is no special arrangement to help refugees escaping from Palestine or from Gaza. She says the pro-Palestine movement brought down Braverman and has the power to bring down the Tory government. That's not true. She says the student protesters are very attached to what is happening in Palestine, and they are doing what they can to stop universities who provide £450 million to the Israeli state and military rather than their own facilities. That is the movement that started in America. You are the only one who's completely out of touch with what the majority of Britons think. The majority do not support what Israel is doing, and they want us to stop sending weapons. Well, again, she is mistaken here. The pro-Palestinian solidarity marches are still continuing, but simply because something is popular doesn't make it right. And this is something that I'm afraid people regularly get wrong. And popularity is not the same as morality. And Braverman, instead of approaching this from a philosophical point of view and identifying the problems in Lali's argument, went on the offensive by asking her what is her view of Hamas. What she was clearly trying to do was to trap Lali into supporting Hamas. The reason you want to talk about Hamas is because you want to keep justifying spending money for Israel, she said. So this is not to do with Hamas. This is about anti-conservatism. No. You have no view of Hamas or connection to Hamas. Do you believe Israel has a right to exist? Again, trying to trap Lali rather than to expose Lali as being a fairly lightweight interviewer. Lali said, what is your message to the majority of people in Britain? They hate the Tories and hate you specifically. Very, very ad hominem there. She also claimed that the International Court of Justice had declared the events in Palestine a genocide. Braverman was quite right in saying that is wrong. In fact, the furthest that the International Court has gone is to or rather, even the UN is to say that Israel has not stopped a potential genocide. So the words genocide are certainly used, but not in the way that Lali is trying to suggest. The student went on about the reality of 40,000 people dead and millions displaced. Again, she's right there. And Braverman didn't have a clear answer. Braverman said that the Israeli military was targeting Hamas, and there's no intention to kill citizens in the conflict. But sadly, a lot of citizens are dying. And the approach of the Israeli military is probably the only approach possible by a single organization like Israel. And I don't see that in the conflict that was chosen there was any other alternative. There was any chance that the civilian population would not be heavily attacked and intimidated, and that many of them would die. But this was a fake argument that GB News set up. If GB News wanted to set up a proper argument with Braverman, and if Braverman were brave enough to face somebody who could actually articulate a proper argument and who had done their research, then I think it would be an interesting opportunity to see whether Braverman actually is capable of responding on the spot to serious questions. But this paper tiger approach to Braverman and to other politicians is simply a way to exonerate stupidity. And there were so many issues that should have been brought up, like, for example, Braverman's abusive treatment of Albania, her pillorying of Pakistan, her various the various laws that she sponsored through Parliament, one of which has now been fairly brutally destroyed in Northern Ireland. Her legacy will not be one that I think she can look back on with pride. And that is the area that needs to be addressed. The area about her support of Israel is a secondary issue, and the student should have been talking about the legislation and the implementation of the policing around the protests, the protest marches, and indeed the corresponding marches by Israeli sympathizers, and the lack of support that the police seem to provide for that. The bias in GB News is, of course, well known, but I was shocked by the way that they provided such an opportunity for Suella Braverman, and then at the same time she still failed to manifest any real sense. It was a hodgepodge of second-rate ex-ministerial bluster. And yeah, madness. But I think we should just simply be grateful that she's no longer a minister, and that each outing she has in public destroys her future hopes of the top job.